Okay, good morning all. Let's start with Pl-Sql lectures. So till now, all of you have learned the SQL. Now, after learning the SQL, learning the Pl-Sql is not a difficult task at all. So what the Pl-Sql is? A Pl-Sql is a procedural language extension to the SQL. Now, what do you mean by the procedural language extension to the SQL? Simply, we can say that SQL is an interpreter-based language. You have to execute one statement at a time. Correct? Now, that does not have a programming features. What do you mean by the programming features? You cannot connect more than one statements and execute it. So understand in this way that different RDBMS product vendor have developed their own database language by extending the SQL for their own database product. Now, why I'm saying this a different RDBMS product? Because we are talking about the Pl-Sql. So Pl-Sql is belong to Oracle. If you're going to the SQL server, it is a transact SQL. So every RDBMS have their own extension, and that is some extension of the SQL. SQL is a common language, but Pl-Sql is not common everywhere. Syntax in Pl-Sql may differ in transact SQL. Correct? So simply you can say procedural language is nothing but it is an extension to the SQL. An extension to SQL with a design feature of programming language like a procedural or object oriented. And Pl-Sql is supported as internal host language within the SQL server. Now, in Oracle, we have a procedural language is equivalent in Microsoft as a transact SQL. Pl-Sql module. Why we use a Pl-Sql? What is the requirement when we know that SQL is there? So in Pl-Sql, you can write a certain blocks. That is a modules. So in the procedural, basically the three things is required Pl-Sql. For an example, if you want to write a stored procedures, stored functions, triggers, packages, or anonymous block, that is called that will be required Pl-Sql. Now, when we write a Pl-Sql module, that time in that module we have three major sections. In SQL, there is no separate sections. There we have clauses, select, from, where, they are the SQL statements. But in Pl-Sql, you can use some procedural language also, so hence it is having three modules. First is called as variable declaration part. That's a section. Second is executable section. And the third is an exception handler. So in Pl-Sql, when you're writing a block or a module, at that time, we have to use that module in three sections. Simple here, first section will be considered as variable declaration section. Second will be the executable section. And third will be the exception handler, where we can write our exceptions. Simple. In other places, you have learned about the try and catch. So here it is an exception handler as a separate. Now, when we move ahead, you can write a blocks in a Pl-Sql. When we write a blocks, there are two types of blocks are available. One block is called an anonymous, and second is called a named block. So what's the difference between the anonymous block and a named block? In anonymous block, we just execute as a part of any block, or we can say we can write without any name. So they cannot be stored in your database. Hence, it does not have any name. So it is just anonymous, no name to them. Named means which has a certain name. And once you have done the coding, that coding can be saved in the database and can be called whenever it is required. That's why it is called as a named block. But if you see this, both are written actually in the same manner. In anonymous block, we have start with a declare, then begin, exception, and end. So declare is nothing but you are defining a declaration section. So here you can declare what all you want to use in your block. So any declaration part, any declaration thing will be done in the declaration part. Begin decides that your executable part has been started. And there you write your logic. Then exception part is a part where you handle the exception. And end is a keyword. All four are the keywords that decides that your block has been ended. Simple here. So declare, declaration part, begin, executable part, exception, exception handling part, and end is deciding your block has been ended. Simple. Now look at the same thing in the named. In the name, you will not see as a declaration part. Here we have name of that block, whether it's a procedure or a function. So we give a procedure and we give the name of the procedure. Then we have a is. So this before is a global declaration. That is, you can say the parameters. But between is and begin is nothing but a declaration part. Simple. And begin we have already discussed. It's the executable part starts, exception, exception handling, and end. So almost writing a block is the same whether it's anonymous or a named. So simple. So basically we have two types of blocks. One anonymous block, second is a named block. I hope this much is clear to everyone. Yes. Let's move ahead. Now, what is the structure of block that we discussed? It's just a repetition, but it will make more clear understanding to you. Declare keyword. Then we have a all variable declaration in declare. Begin. Begin means executable part has been started. There you have either SQL statement or Pl-Sql statement or a subblocks in the beginning. That executable logic you write in the begin part. Then exception. In this, you write an action which has to be performed if exception occurs. Very simple here. Then finally, we have an end, which is ending the block. Now, out of this is the structure of your block. Now, in this structure, declaration part is an optional part. Many times we don't want to declare any variable, so you need not to use declare. You can start with begin also. Begin is a compulsion, required part. Then exception again is an optional part, and end. So out of these four, you can see begin and end is a compulsion part. In between, you can write your business logic. Very simple here. Now, how does the Pl-Sql require? So why we need a Pl-Sql? Because we can perform with a SQL as well. And what is the use of Pl-Sql? Now let's assumption this is the Pl-Sql block. It's a node. Node means from where you are passing this statements. This will move to your server, because all this compilation is done by the RDBMS. So it is not execute at a node site, it always execute at a server site. Correct? So this block will send to the Pl-Sql block. Now this block is an anonymous block. So hence this has to send as a complete block to the Pl-Sql engine. Simple here. Now in this Pl-Sql block, you might be having a Pl-Sql statement and a SQL statement both. In that case, whatever the Pl-Sql statements are there, that will be handled by procedural statement executed, and all SQL statement will be handled by SQL statement executed. Simple. That's a basically work on the Oracle server. I hope this is the concept is clear how Pl-Sql block is working. Now, what's an advantage of Pl-Sql? It gives you the ability to real life programming, tight integration with the SQL, fully portability, access to predefined packages which is provided by the Oracle, tight security because all the blocks are executed under the database, and whatever the security you provide to the database is applied to this as well. Better performance and provide the ability to add the middle tier business logic to the client and server application. Very simple here. Now, I hope this was an overview why Pl-Sql is required. So I'm sure you don't have any question. So we'll move ahead. Now, whenever we write a block, that time we are using lexical units and variables. I'm sure everybody know what the lexical units is. What is the lexical units? We write a Pl-Sql program as a line of text using a specific set of characters. Okay, that characters is from A to Z, 0 to 9 plus symbols. So all these are the characters. Now by combining these characters, they create certain keywords, and that keywords are nothing but a lexical units. Now we simply write declare. It's a combination of D-E-C-L-A-R, declare. It's a bunch of characters. Now combination of this declare word is nothing but a lexical unit. Begin, exception, and all are the lexical units. Now lexical units can be classified simple in a different forms. First is called as a delimiters. Delimiters are nothing but certain symbols what we use in writing a Pl-Sql block is called a delimiters. Now delimiters could be a simple, could be a compound. What do you mean by the simple and compound? Equal to is a one symbol we are using, single symbol, a single character. That is simple. But sometimes we use colon equal to as an assignment operator. That is a combination of two characters. That will be called as a compound symbols. Very simple here. Then we have identifiers. Identifiers is nothing but the name what we provide to any block or anything will be considered as identifiers. Or you can say the name of the variable is also nothing but identifiers. Literals. Literals are nothing but what bunch of character you're providing will be used as it is without a different meaning. That's a literals. Simple. And after that, we have, comments. Comments are a special character which is available in your program but will not be used as a part of your program. That's a comment. And finally, the variables. I'm sure everybody know the variables. I'm not going in much detail here because here we are, our target is to understand the writing the Pl-Sql statements. What are the delimiters? We have already discussed. That is all the symbols. What are we using is considered as delimiters. Very simple. It could be simple or it could be compound. All are the delimiters. Identifiers, which include reserved words. Simply, we can say that the name to any unit. So the unit will be identified by the identifier. Simple here. Comments. Now, let's talk about the comments. Comments is nothing but If you are familiar with the programming languages, you know it very well that that is used for giving the information to the developer, not for the machine. So that thing is considered as a comment. Now comment are of two types. One is single line comment and second is considered as multi-line comment. Single line comment is used with the hyphen, double hyphen, and multi-line comment begin with a slash asterisk and end with a asterisk slash. Okay, so better option that we can write a one Pl-Sql block. So that will clear in your mind that how it works. So for that purpose, let me go to the SQL Plus. Okay, hold it. Give me a second. Okay, so this is a screen where we are going to communicate with SQL. So this I'm not explaining because we have already discussed this in the SQL part. So here I have logged in as a HR. Now, if I say select star from here, and if I press enter, it execute immediately and give you the result. Very simple here. I cannot wait for second line. But if I start with begin, and if I press the enter, it is asking me to enter the second line because now begin decides that it is a Pl-Sql block. It is not a single SQL statement. So we have started with a begin, and here I write the same thing. Select star from 12 and colon. Still, it is not executing because we have to use end the block. Still, it is not executing. So now block has been returned. But if you want to execute, you have to use a slash to execute this. So we got an error. Now here, the error is that this when we execute, this is execute in a global area of Oracle. Simple. That is SGA, System Global Area. So here the memory is divided into the two parts. One is a private global area and one is a system global area. When we execute a SQL, it executes in a system global area and everything is managed by the IDPs. But when we talk about Pl-Sql block, whatever the data is coming from the database has to be handled by us. Now you can see here there is a no error, no difference we have done. Just we have written the same string here, or statement here, same statement here. Here we got an error. Here there was no error. Reason is whatever is coming from this particular output is automatically handled in SGA and we got a result. But here, hence we are writing a logic, so that has to be stored in some of the variable. So same thing, how to write it now? I'll say declare. Now we know that declare is nothing but a declaration part of Pl-Sql, correct? Now in this declaration part, I declare let's say we give a date, some variable name. So variable name is v data. Then you give a data type to this. We give a data type var char sorry, varchar and we give a size as 5. Okay, so it has been declared now. Then we say begin. Simple here. Now I'll write select star into. Now why into? Because what the data will come, that has to be stored in this variable. So we say store into X. So X, we would give the name as a V data. Then we can say from dual. Very simple. Now you can see the difference. The difference here is we are directly writing the query. Here we are first storing that in our programming global area. Simple. Then we'll say the end. Okay, now let's execute this. We got an error star. Now star represent, we have learned that star represent all the columns. Star represent all the columns. And hence we are using the star and we are storing in a single column, which is not valid. So now what to be done? Simply, we can again say declare, then vdata varchar 5. Then we say that select, sorry, not select here, that has to be an executable part. So we'll write a begin. And in the begin, we'll say select dummy. Dummy is nothing but a column name into vdata from 12. And again, we'll say the end. And we'll execute this. Now you will see that it has been executed without any error. But the question is, where is that result? So it has taken the data into this. Now data is available here for your logic. So if I want to see that data, we can simply, okay, it's taking a long time to simply what we say, typing it again and again. So I'm using a ed is nothing but a edit the buffer. Okay, so what all we have written the last that is available here. I'll just make a changes here. Now you know that we have this here. So for printing this out, we have one DBMS package that's called as a DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line. And here we are declaring the v data. And close this. So that has come here. Now let's execute. Okay, so why we didn't get it here? Okay, v data actually there is no record because we are retrieving from dual. So do we have a table here? Select from Bollywood. Yes, we have a record in the Bollywood. So we'll retrieve the data from the Bollywood. Okay, so we'll do one thing here. First, clear the screen. Okay, we'll start from the fresh. Now here, let's say I'm starting with declare. Then I say v data, v name as varchar 20. Okay. Then I say the begin. Here I say select name into rename from Hollywood where ID equal to 1. Select name into rename from Bollywood where ID equal to 1. Then I say dbms dot output dbms underscore output output dot put underscore line as we need, and I'll say the end. Sorry. DBMS underscore output. Okay. Okay. Now it is working perfectly, but problem is we are not able to see because we have connected as a client and this program is executed at the server side, correct? So we'll say here set server output on. What spelling mistake is happening? Set. Okay, I'm going to do the EG and we have the same program here. And now if I execute this, you got the name as Varun. Simple here. So simply what you have done, you have retrieved the name of that particular ID and stored in that particular thing, and you have displayed that name to just check that perfectly. So this is how we write a block of Pl-Sql. Yeah. Now we were talking about comment. Now I have used a two dashes. That is nothing but a comment. So now this line has been commented. Now if I execute this, you will see it has executed, but the name Varun is not came here because that display line has been commented. It's clear? Very simple to understand this thing here. Let's come back to this. So I'm sure that you understood the comment here. Same way we have a comment as a multiple lines. If I want to comment 4 to 5 lines, so no need to use hash hash. You can use start with a slash asterisk and with a asterisk slash. Now variables. So I hope you understood. Now we have taken an example of the variables also. So what is the variables? Variables are nothing but they are used to store the temporary data. Now in our last example, what we have used? We have used it for storing the Varun. Then you can manipulate it. Manipulate it means what? Now that Varun can be changed in your program. Plus you can reusable that. And it's easy to maintain. That's the use of the variables. Now in the variables, we have two types of variables. One is called Pl-Sql variable and one is called a non-Pl-Sql variable. So understand a very simple meaning here. How we can say Pl-Sql variable and non-Pl-Sql variable. Pl-Sql variables are those variables which is declared in your block. Non-PLSQL variable is a variable which is declared outside the block, but you are accessing in the block. That's called a non-PLSQL variable. So simple thing, our block starts with a begin and end with an end. So within that block, whatever the variable you declare is considered as PLSQL variable. But anything which is declared outside the block is considered as non-PLSQL variable. Then third thing we have that's called a constants. So constant is nothing but a kind of a variable, but once you define the value to that, that value cannot be changed in your executable part. That means you cannot reassign the value to that variable. That variable will have a fixed value. That's why it is called as a constant. A PLSQL variable. So what's a PLSQL variable? We understood that. That is nothing but a variable which is declared within a block. Now in PLSQL variable, we have two types of variable. One is called as a scalar variable that can store only single value, where we can store one data at a time. That's called a scalar variable. The second is called a composite variable. Composite variable in PLSQL is called as a record. In PLSQL, it is called as a record, where we can store more than one data in that variable. It's same like a structure in C and class in CPP. Now, if you want to use scalar variable, we have already taken an example and we have seen that simply you have to declare that variable in the declaration part and store a single value. But for composite variable, you have to define a structure because it can store more than one value, but what type of that two values are there, that has to be decided. So for declaring the type, we use a keyword called as a type. Now here I have given the example. Example is, first I'm declaring a type. So I can say type name. So this I'm declaring a new different data type. Here we have used the varchar2 as a data type which is predefined by system. So here we say the type name is a record. Then we say is record, because any composite variable is called as a record here. So we call them as a type name is record. Then in bracket, we define what all fields or attributes will be a part of that record. So we say the A as a first field name, data type number, B as a second field name, data type varchar2 10. Simple here. So once the type is created or declared, then you have to declare that particular variable with that type. Now I say vrec, data type will be the rec. Here m name, data type is a varchar2 10. Instead of this, we are using this data type. So now in this data type, we have two fields, A and B. Very simple. Now in a record, we have one other record that's called as a reference record. That means you can directly refer to a column which refer a particular column in the table. Directly you can refer to a particular column in the table. Simple. Now for an example, let's see how it works. A PLSQL records a data structure that can hold data items of different kinds. Now suppose we have one employee, but I want to store their first name, last name, age and gender. So here employee is a logical unit, one variable as an employee, but that is containing a information about employees, first name, last name, age, and gender. So this will be the attributes of the employee. So now this can be stored as a single variable as a record. So how we are going to do that? We'll declare a type first. That is type name is record. Then we declare their fields. And finally, we declare a particular variable with that fields, and that will be the employees and excuse me, employees as rec. So simple here. That's clear. So for this first lecture, I request all of you that you just practice for this. Some allergic has done. Sorry for this. Practice for this. Try to work on this. And once you feel it's correct, move to the next lecture. Okay, so in the next lecture, we'll discuss further to this and we'll see how practically we can work on this. So this was a theoretical, we have taken an overview of the Pl-Sql lecture. In next lectures, we'll start some exercises which will help you to write actual Pl-Sql code. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that everybody is understanding it here.